Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Bryte, the new Roll20 tabletop role-playing game. And I'm specifically going to be talking about the dice mechanics within that game and the rules mechanics within that game. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so just a little bit of a brief description of Bryte. Bryte is a tabletop role-playing game by Roll20. It is connected to the co-founder of Roll20, Nolan T. Jones, who has been in the TRPG headlines for reasons that have nothing to do with Bryte recently, which was its own episode. And it is also connected to James Introcaso, and he is the writer for the rules and the dice mechanics within Bryte. And specifically, it also is a science fiction tabletop role-playing game, and is one of the very first tabletop role-playing games ever to be built from the ground up to be run not at a physical table, but to be run on a VTT, which is a virtual tabletop, which is the primary product that Roll20 supplies to the tabletop role-playing game industry. So Roll20 is it's an application that is used to play games online. And so this is a huge thing. Roll20 has decided to create their own tabletop role-playing game, which makes them a direct competitor for all of the tabletop role-playing games that are being played on their platform. So that's a really big, intricate turn, okay? Now, let's talk about the rules and the dice mechanics. The rules mechanics and the dice mechanics of this game. So this game is currently in production, okay? It is being created right now. And they're having an open... They're being very open and very transparent about how they're building the game, which I am a TRPG commentator. I am very appreciative of this. When you're open about your game and you're willing to share the rules mechanics and share the dice mechanics way before they actually hit production, there's a chance for the community to talk about it. Great mistakes can be avoided because you can bring genius minds onto it, and those minds can discuss something and they can call out, where you might be going down a bad road, or they can call out a really cool opportunity. I think it's a really unique way for games to be designed. So James Introcaso, very interesting guy. He was heavy into podcasting for a while, TRPG podcasting, and recently he was anointed by Wizards of the Coast and was given an actual writing credit on Waterdeep Dragon Heist, which is an actual hardback official WotC adventure, and he is one of the writers credited on that book. That is a huge win for him, and now he is the designer for the rules mechanics and for the dice mechanics for Bryte. All right, here's what he's done. Okay, so here's how the game is structured. It has the game. Everything done in the game comes off of 18 skills. There are 6 physical skills, 6 social skills, and 6 mental skills. Right? Now this is fascinating because what we're seeing here is that basically, excuse me, James Introcaso is saying when you look at the broad array of human activities. When a human being does something, that is a physical action, a social action, or a mental action, which is a really interesting breakdown of the spectrum of human activity. Very, very interesting. And I think it's, and that's one of the reasons why I love why I absolutely love core rule books, and why I'm really not a super fan of source books, right? Core rule books is showing you how a game designer looks at the entire structure of our world, and then is looking at that and then applying that structure to a fictional world, right? And they're choosing to preserve things from our world, abandon things from our world, and change things from our world in their fictional world that they're developing. And so I think this is really interesting to hear this breakdown, right? And by the way, to get the full access to this game, you actually have to be a Roll20 Plus member or a Roll20 Pro member. I am neither, right? But there are a lot of articles where James Introcaso and Nolan T. Jones are discussing their build, and which is great. It's really nice, right? So, and I was just fascinated to hear how they were approaching this game. So I think that's really cool, the way they're doing the 18 different skills, and pretty much every single role you do for your player character is going to be one of those skills, right? So then, how do you deal with those skills, right? Well, each one of those skills, you show your proficiency in those skills by the type of die that you have for that skill. So let's say that one of the physical skills is melee, right? So this would be a melee attack, an attack with a weapon, right? You could have a D4, which would be the worst possible rating for that skill. You could have a D6, a D8, a D10, or D12. That's it, right? So this game does not really use D20s. It uses D4, D6, D8, and D10, and D12, right? And so now, so that's really interesting, right? So that is how you determine your proficiency with a skill. The higher your die type, the better you are with that skill. Okay. All right. Let's talk about the action economy. So James Introcaso has done something very, very interesting in this game with the action economy. All right. The action economy is you can take, any player character can take 6 actions per turn, right? All right. So 6 actions per turn. And I can hear you like, 6 actions per turn? That's bonkers, right? Well, he's handled it in a particular way. All right, so how do you make a difficulty check? How do you make a difficulty check in Burn Bryte, right? Well, here's how you do it. If you are in a bog standard difficulty check, okay? Let's say your player character is going to attack somebody with a dagger. And so you say my player character attacks the space goblin, because it is a sci-fi game, with a dagger. You pick up and let's say your proficiency is D6, so you're not the worst, but you're not even close to the best. So you have D6s, right? You pick up 2 D6s, and if it's sunny and the space goblin is right in front of you, there are no other modifiers. You roll 2 D6. Okay. Now, what is the number you need to beat in order to succeed? Well, you don't have one. You roll those 2 dice, and as long as you don't hit a doubles, you succeed. If you hit a doubles, a 3 and a 3, or a 6 and a 6, or a 1 and a 1, you fail, okay? So you fail in this game when you roll doubles, okay? So if this is your first action in your turn and you're trying to hit that space goblin, you roll 2d6, you get a 1 and a 4, and you have successfully hit that goblin, okay? Now, like on your next turn, you could choose to attack that goblin again, right? Now you're going to roll 3d6, right? And if you get a doubles on any of those 3, 6, so if you get 2, 2, and a 4, you just got a doubles and you failed, okay? You can keep going and continue to do actions throughout your turn. On your turn, you can do 6 separate things, right? And you can repeat an action. I think you could. Well, that hasn't been announced. I'm assuming you could repeat an action, right? But every single action you take on your turn, subsequent action, you add a dice to your roll. So the more you do in your turn, the higher your probability goes up of getting doubles. Also, you can see too that the better you are in a skill, right? If you have D12s, if you're rolling 3D12, your odds of getting a double are much lower than if you're rolling 3D4, right? This is absolutely brilliant. I love this idea. So one of the things, I think this is extremely well handled by James Introcaso. My hat is off to you, sir. This is a really super cool dice mechanic. It's a dice mechanic. And by the way, I'm really doubling down on this new opinion I have. I really feel tabletop role-playing games are created by the core components. The core components have changed. It used to be what's your setting, what's your rules, right? Now it very much is what is your setting, what are your rules, what are your dice, right? One of the reasons why dice are coming up as a new success-failure mechanic is basically over at the macro level, tabletop role-playing games are being played by rich people. This is absolutely a thing. It is, without a doubt, most people who are playing tabletop role-playing at the macro level are middle class to well-to-do. And that means they can buy literally dozens or hundreds of dice. I do know people with well over 1,000 dice, right? And so that means that you can have people now buying dice with dice for one specific game. You can have people buying dice that are color-coded. You can have people buying dice in multiple sets. You know, there is just so much that can be done with dice now, and I feel like this is a new flourishing avenue within tabletop role-playing games overall, right? And I love this because I think James Introcaso is doing something really unique with dice here, right? Now, he's not doing anything that would require special dice purchases. I think they're using regular numbered dice, right? But it's a really interesting dice mechanic. And the idea of focusing on dice and seeing what you can do with dice, because I don't think we've even remotely scratched the surface on what can be done with dice in tabletop role-playing games. FFG's narrative dice is certainly going down a new road with this. Very, very exciting. I think we really haven't done enough to explore color coding. What does color coding mean with dice? I've never seen a game not only use color coding, but take color coding even to a next level of, for instance, blue dice means, blue dice might be for magical effects, right? Whereas, but what about a blue opaque die? What about a blue transparent die? Do they do different things? We haven't even really started to touch, what about D6s that are, 1 centimeter tall and minis that are half a centimeter tall, right? Dice sizing. We really haven't scratched very much. Positioning, dice positioning. Where are your dice placed around your character sheet? Does having your dice on the right side of your character sheet mean something, and having your dice on the left side of your character sheet mean something, right? What about there's just so much that's going on with dice that hasn't even been touched in dice mechanics yet. Here's another one. What is the position of your dice when it's not your turn, right? What if your D12 is on a 7 and, the person sitting next to you, their D12 is on a 3, and then somebody who was taking their turn rolls with a D20 a 3. Does that mean something for your character? Right? There's just so much that can be done with dice. And I think this is one thing that's emerging right now, is that TRPGs are realizing we have a rich, robust industry. We have lots of games. We can try lots of new things. And we have not even scratched what can be done with dice, right? And so I love this idea of not really rolling to get a difficulty check, but rolling to see if you hit doubles, right? And if you hit doubles, you fail, right? This is really unique. I think there's been a few games that have kind of floated toward this idea, but I think James Introcaso has implemented it in a really tight, compelling, super cool way. And I think this is a really, really unique overall flourish, right? It's a dice flourish, and I love it. I think it's a really, really cool idea. What does this, and it's so counterintuitive, right? Normally, the more dice you're rolling, the better. But this is flipped out on its ear, right? And here, the less dice you're rolling, the better, right? And it also turns over on its head. Usually you're trying for a high-low. In many games, you're trying for a low roll. Here, it's not as relevant here what your numbers are. Now, James Introcaso might connect, certain effects to if the number is high, if the numbers roll. But this idea of you're just rolling and you're trying not to get a double, and if you get a double, you fail, and if you don't get a double, you succeed. That is a really cool mechanic. I think it's really interesting. The other thing is, what does it do for the player characters, right? Well, one, even at your worst, right? At your worst roll, which is if you're not that skilled in a skill, right? That's going to be a D4, right? When you're rolling 2D4, which is that's not. You could be rolling 6D4, right? Which your odds of getting a double there are extremely high. But if you're rolling 2D4, you have a pretty good chance of succeeding. So one of the things that I really like about this is this is very cinematic, where, right out of the gate, because it's, it sounds like it's generally or easier to succeed in this game, right? It's very heroic, right? You are assuming proficiency. You are assuming a high level of talent. You are assuming, I would say, a heroic tone. And I love that. I love that the dice is carrying a heroic tone in it. I think that's really, really cool. And also, it's very cinematic, right? You have a cinematic situation where you are really seeing a situation where it's very almost like you would see in a Marvel movie. When Star-Lord goes to punch somebody, usually he's going to succeed, and sure, there's a way that can go south. But generally, it's presuming a high level of proficiency. It's presuming a high level of success. So I'm just really, really, really impressed with James Introcaso's work for the rules mechanics and for the dice mechanics. They're very simple. They're very intuitive. They really have a different feel than anything I've ever seen in any other tabletop role-playing game. And I think this is really exciting. And very, very exciting rules mechanics and dice mechanics. Really, my hat is off to Introcaso for these rules mechanics and these dice mechanics. I think this is very eloquently done. And I just wanted to share that with you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on how you think James Introcaso has done in incorporating these new rules and these new dice mechanics into Bryte. And thank you very much. And please consider liking and subscribing.